بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولي الأولين والآخرين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وخليله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. أيها الإخوة, in the previous lesson we gave a brief introduction to this risala, which is entitled Ath-Thalaatha wa Adillatuha, authored by Al-Imam Al-Mujaddid Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab At-Tamimi rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'a. And in this lesson we'll begin immediately in studying the risala. So the author rahimahullah, he began. Is anybody going to read, or can anybody read Arabic? Huh? Read the Arabic, or shall I read it? For one?
Salman is not here today.
Okay.
He was supposed to read it.
Okay.
I can read it.
تفضل.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال المؤلف رحمة الله تعالى عليه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اعلم رحمك الله أنه يجب علينا تعلم أربع مسائل. الأولى العلم، وهو معرفة الله ومعرفة نبيه ومعرفة دين الإسلام بالأدلة. الثانية العمل به. الثالثة الدعوة إليه. الرابعة الصبر على الأذى فيه. والدليل قوله تعالى: والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. قال الشافعي رحمه الله: لو ما أنزل الله حجة على خلقه إلا هذه السورة لكفتهم. وقال البخاري رحمه الله: باب العلم قبل القول والعمل. والدليل قوله تعالى: فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله واستغفر لذنبك. فبدأ بالعلم قبل القول والعمل.
أحسنت. جزاك الله خير. So the author rahimahullah, he began his risala with a number of introductions. So this, which was mentioned, is not the three principles. Rather, this is an introduction, and after this will be two or three further introductions. And the author rahimahullah, he began with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And in the previous lessons in Al-Qawa'id Al-Arba', we spoke about the importance of this phrase Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, its virtues, its meanings, and why the author began with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So firstly, ayyuhal ikhwa, what is the name of this phrase? What do we call this phrase? What's the shortened name of this phrase? Al-Basmala. Ahsant. This phrase, it is called Al-Basmala. And it is the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to begin important matters by mentioning the blessed name of Allah Azza wa Jal. And why is this? Tabarrukan, in order to seek barakah, in order to seek goodness and blessings in the beginning with the name of Allah Azza wa Jal. And for this reason we find from the adab of a Muslim, which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught, is to begin things with the basmala. So before we eat, we say the basmala. Before we make wudu, when we leave the house, Bismillahi wa tawakkaltu ala Allahi wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Before we enter the masjid, Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik, etc. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that we begin many things with the basmala. And this is from the adab, meaning the practices which have been taught for a Muslim to do. And in the narration, it is narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, كل كلام أو أمر ذي بال لم يبدأ فيه ببسملة فإنه أبتر أو قال أقطع. The hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu an, which is narrated by Ahmad in his Musnad and others, it is narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, every important speech, or he said every important matter which is not begun with the name of Allah, then it is abtar. Abtar meaning aqta', meaning it will be deficient in its blessings. And as you know, this hadith, which is mentioned in the books of the Sunan and the Musnad of Imam Ahmad and others, the ulama differed over its authenticity or not. So there were a group of ulama from the muhaddithin who considered it to be weak, and there were others amongst the fuqaha and also the muhaddithin who considered it to be hasan li ghayrihi. Amongst them An-Nawawi, and amongst them Ibn Hajar, and also amongst them Ibn Baz rahimahullah. They considered this hadith to be hasanun li ghayrihi. Ala kulli hal, whether the narration itself is authentic or not, but without doubt the meaning is valid. Without doubt the meaning is correct. And so we begin anything we do, anything important, by mentioning the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, in order for Allah to place barakah in that action or that decision. And of course, the Mus'haf, it starts with the Basmalah. Surah Al-Fatiha starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he would dictate letters to be written to the various kings, he would start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, min Muhammadin Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam ila Fulan ibn Fulan. He would say Bismillahir Rahim from Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah, to emperor or king so and so, so and so. So this is the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we mentioned previously that the Basmalah contains 3 names of Allah. What are they? Which 3 names of our Creator are mentioned in Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Akhi? What do you think? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You know, here, if somebody asks you a question outside and you don't know the answer, then what do you say? La adri, I don't know. Because we have to fear Allah that we don't give a wrong answer or wrong fatwa. But when we're in this gathering, this isn't a gathering of fatwa. This is a gathering of learning, revising, making sure we understand. So it's no problem to attempt an answer, even if the answer may be wrong. Because I'm not asking you to give a fatwa or a ruling, I'm just trying to revise between us. So, and you know the answer inshallah. Look, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim means in the name of Allah, Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, Ar-Rahim, the bestower of mercy. Which 3 names of the Creator are mentioned in this sentence? What do you think?
Most merciful.
So that's Ar-Rahman, and then Bismillah, Allah. The word Allah, Bismillah, that's the first name. Second name, Ar-Rahman, as you said, the most merciful. Third name, Ar-Rahim, the one who bestows mercy. So these are 3 beautiful names of Allah in this phrase. Bismillah meaning Allah, one of the names of our Creator. Ar-Rahman, one of the names of our Creator. Ar-Rahim, one of the names of our Creator. Naam, write it down, write everything down inshallah. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, 3 beautiful names of Allah. And which 2 sifat are mentioned? Which 2 sifat are mentioned in Tafaddal? Ahsant. Ar-Rahma. Al-Uluhiyya and Ar-Rahma. So Al-Uluhiyya, which is the attribute behind the blessed name Allah. This blessed name Allah, it contains the sifa or the attribute of Al-Uluhiyya. What does Al-Uluhiyya mean? That Allah subhanahu has the exclusive right, the divine right to worship, to ibadah. So the meaning of Allah is the one who has the exclusive and divine right to ibadah. This is the meaning of the blessed word Allah. And Ar-Rahma, we know the meaning of Ar-Rahma, mercy. And this is contained in Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. طيب, what's the difference between the word Ar-Rahman and the word Ar-Rahim? Now all of this is a revision for previous lesson. تفضل.
Ar-Rahman is general
Okay,
creation,
okay.
and Ar-Rahim is specific to the believers.
Naam, that was a view. This is one of the differences. Another difference, you've answered. تفضل.
Ar-Rahman is a large amount of mercy,
Yeah,
extensive mercy.
yeah.
And Ar-Rahim is the one who bestows that mercy. Okay.
Yes, so Ar-Rahman is describing the essence of Allah. Ar-Rahman is describing the essence of Allah. He is Ar-Rahman, meaning the Rahma al-Wasi'ah, the one who possesses the most amount of mercy. And Ar-Rahim is describing the action of Allah, meaning He bestows mercy. The action of Allah, that He bestows mercy. And this blessed statement, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this is important for us to remember, that this is from the qualities and the traits of people of Iman, that they always begin with the name of Allah. Meaning, if you want to be a good Muslim, if you want to be a person of Iman, then begin everything beneficial by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And that is one of the traits and the qualities and the adab of a Muslim, of a mu'min. Then the author said, "I'lam rahimakallah." Know, may Allah have mercy upon you. And we said previously, look how the author began by making a dua for the student, for the reader. He said, "Rahimakallah," may Allah have mercy upon you. And this shows us, and this is the style of writing that the author has. In many of his rasail, he begins with a dua for the student or for the reader. And this is to show us that da'wah and teaching and conveying Islam has to be built upon mercy. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ar-Rahimun yarhamuhumur Rahman." The most merciful, Ar-Rahimun yarhamuhumur Rahman. The most merciful, meaning Allah, He shows mercy to those who are merciful towards others. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ar-Rahman yarhamu." He said, "Ar-Rahimun yarhamuhumur Rahman." The most merciful, meaning Allah, shows mercy to those who show mercy to others. So knowledge and learning and teaching has to be built upon what? Upon rahmah, upon compassion and mercy. And then the author began mentioning 4 obligations upon every single person. 4 obligations upon every single Muslim. Naam. What are those 4 obligations? Summarize for me. What are those 4 obligations? What's your name, Akhi? Before I ask Ahmed, anybody else, before he answers? تفضل.
So there's knowledge,
Go, أحسنت. Knowledge,
implementing it,
actions,
da'wah,
good, da'wah,
and patience.
أحسنت, as-sabr. And knowledge regarding what? So I just want you to summarize what's in the text. Knowledge regarding what? What's your name? Huh? Da'im. Before Da'im answers, تفضل.
To know Allah, to know the prophets, and
To know Islam with its evidences. Now, this is the summary of what the author said. He said, أنه يجب علينا تعلم 4 مسائل. That we have to know 4 things. We have to understand 4 important matters. And that is, that it is an obligation upon every single Muslim to have al-ilm, knowledge, wal-amal, to act upon this knowledge, wal-da'wah, to call to the knowledge, as-sabr, and to be patient. And the first of these 4 matters is al-ilm. And what is the obligation upon the Muslim? What type of knowledge? He said, ma'rifatullah, knowing Allah, wa ma'rifatu nabiyyihi, and knowing His Prophet, wa ma'rifatu din al-Islam bil adillah, and knowing the religion of Islam with its evidences. So this first sentence, to ma'rifatu din al-Islam bil adillah, put a small footnote next to it, that the rest of the risala, meaning the rest of Al-Usool Ath-Thalaatha, it is an explanation of this first point. The rest of Al-Usool Ath-Thalaatha, everything we're going to study from now on, is actually an explanation of this first point. Because Al-Usool Ath-Thalatha, these three principles, what do they refer to? Ahmed? The three principles, what do they refer to? The questions in the grave. What are the three questions in the grave, Daim? Ahsant, man rabbuk, wa ma dinuk, wa man nabiyyuk. And this is what the author said. Having knowledge of Allah, knowledge of His Prophet, knowledge of the religion of Al-Islam. So the rest of the Risala is an explanation of this point. Of course, notice the author said bil adilla, with evidences. And this means that you cannot succeed in the grave by answering these three questions if it was not based upon evidences. Or to put it another way, the ulama, they say التقليد لا ينفع في العقائد. التقليد لا ينفع في العقائد. That taqleed, meaning blind following, it is not permitted when it comes to matters of al-aqidah. Now, in certain issues of furu' and fiqh, it may be permitted as a necessity. However, when it comes to aqidah, it is not permitted. So, you cannot say, I worship Allah because my father used to worship Allah. I accepted Islam because I was born into family which was upon al-Islam. No. At-taqleed is of no benefit. Rather, you have to know these matters bil adilla, with their evidences. Now, what's the meaning of knowing these three issues with their evidences? Firstly, when we say knowing them with evidences, knowing what with evidences, meaning usulul Islam. And those matters which validate your Islam, those matters by which you become a Muslim, knowing who your Lord is, knowing the Prophet who was sent to you, knowing what the word of Allah is, i.e. the Qur'an, knowing the 6 pillars of Iman. This is what makes you a Muslim. Now, if you don't know these things, a person leaves the fold of Islam. So all of these matters, لا ينفع التقليد في العقائد. Taqleed is not permitted, meaning blind following is not permitted when it comes to any of these matters. It does not benefit you. So if a person said, La ilaha illallah, because somebody merely told him to say La ilaha illallah, without understanding its meanings, without knowing its evidences, that La ilaha illallah, it is of no benefit. These matters, meaning usulul Islam, aqaid, they are only beneficial if you know them with their evidences. What's the meaning of knowing them bil adilla, with its evidences? Meaning, at least once in your lifetime, you read the evidence from the Qur'an or the Sunnah, or you heard it and you had Iman in it. That's it. So it does not mean that all of us have to memorize the evidences. Naam. It does not mean we have to revise the evidences, or they have to be. All it means is that we had Iman in those things because of evidences in the Qur'an and the Sunnah. So if a person, I'll come to you. So if a person worships Allah just because somebody told him to worship Allah, no, not sufficient. You have to worship Allah because you know that in the Quran Allah said to you, wa'budullah, worship Allah, or the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered you to do it. And this shows us the importance of giving evidences to the people. And this is why you'll find in this risala, because we said, what did we say? That this risala is going to explain this first point, bil adilla. The author mentions a dalil, an evidence with every single point he mentions. So, if you read it, and you read it with its evidence, then you know that you have fulfilled this obligation. Naam. He did not just mention his speech, rather he mentioned evidences after it. What was your question? No problem. It's not an obligation for a person to memorize it or revise it or read it again and again. The point is that you had Iman in this based upon an evidence. Based upon an evidence. What's the evidence of this? And if somebody asks, well, where did you get this from? Because in the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib, when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the person in the grave and the questions he will be asked in the grave, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَأَمَّا الْمُؤْمِنْ فَإِنَّهُ يَقُولُ رَبِّيَ اللَّهُ وَدِينِي الْإِسْلَامُ وَنَبِيِّ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم. The mu'min will say, Allah is my Lord, and Islam is my religion, and Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم is my prophet. وَأَمَّا الْكَافِرُ أو الْمُنَافِقُ. As for the kafir or the munafiq, then he will say what? هَاءٌ لَا أَدْرِي سَمِعْتُ النَّاسَ يَقُولُونَ شَيْءًا فَقُلْتُهُ. He will say, I don't know. I used to hear people saying something, so I said it as well. So the kafir or the munafiq who will be punished in the grave, his answer was based upon taqleed. I heard people say something and therefore I said it. This shows us that we have to know the evidences, and then we have iman according to the evidences, not merely blind following the people. But what's the meaning of knowing the evidences? Meaning we read or we heard or we were told of the evidence and we had iman in it, that's sufficient. Doesn't matter if you forgot it afterwards or you did not memorize it. Do you have a question, Naveed?
The rest of Al-Usool are example of the point. What was the point?
Yeah. So we said that the rest of this treatise is going to explain this thing, what we just read, that sentence. That the first obligation is a person knowing Allah, knowing his prophet, knowing his religion with evidences. Yeah, because the three principles, they are, first principle, who is your Lord? Second principle, what is your religion? Third principle, who is your prophet? طيب, the second obligation is what? Al-amal. That we have to act upon this knowledge. This is the second obligation. Every single one of us, after having this knowledge and knowing its evidences, then we have to act upon it. And when it comes to acting upon the knowledge, if you don't act upon the knowledge, sometimes it is kufr if you don't act upon the knowledge. Sometimes it is haram, but not kufr, it's not disbelief. Sometimes it is disliked, and sometimes it's permitted. Now, meaning, there are certain aspects of knowledge, if we don't implement them and act upon them, then this is kufr. And there are certain aspects of knowledge, if we don't implement them, then it is haram but not kufr. It's a sin but it's not kufr. It doesn't take it out of the fold of Islam. And then there are certain aspects of knowledge, if we don't act upon them, then it's makruh, it's disliked. It's not a sin, but it's disliked that you've not done that thing. And there are some aspects of knowledge that are permitted for you to do or leave. So for example, your knowledge of tawheed, your knowledge of iman. Now if a person commits shirk and does not act upon tawheed, then that leaving that amal, it is now kufr. Naam. Your knowledge that khamr is haram. Your knowledge that intoxicants, drugs and alcohol, they are haram. If a person buys and sells drugs and alcohol, and therefore does not act upon that knowledge, we don't say this is disbelief, but we say it's haram. It's a major sin. Your knowledge of some of the sunan and the nawafil. Naam. If you don't act upon those sunan and those nawafil, it's not haram, but it is makruh. Your knowledge about things which are halal. Now, for example, you know that it's halal to eat an apple. You know it's halal to eat a banana. You know it's halal to drink juice. If you don't act upon that knowledge, mubah. There's no problem. If you want to eat it, if you don't want to, don't eat it. So when the author said وَالْعَمَلُ بِهِ, and acting upon it, just remember that not acting upon knowledge, it can either be kufr, or it can be haram and a sin, but not kufr, or it can be disliked, or it can be permitted depending on the type of knowledge. Thirdly, ad-da'wah. And what does da'wah mean? Calling to Allah, calling to that knowledge. This is also an obligation upon every single person. The author said, this is an obligation upon every single person, ad-da'wah. However, what we have to understand is da'wah is types. They say da'wah is two types. Ad-da'watu fil maqal wa ad-da'watu bil ahwal. So, or bil af'al. Ad-da'wah bil aqwal is spreading the religion of Allah through your words. Ad-da'watu bil af'al is also spreading the religion of Allah but through your actions. Meaning, you implementing the religion of Allah. So this da'wah, meaning a da'wah bil af'al, you implementing the religion of Allah, this is wajib on every single Muslim. Now, every single one of us has to demonstrate Islam by acting upon al-Islam. So, for example, the 5 salawat. How do you give da'wah? How do you spread and invite others to the 5 salawat? In 2 ways. Firstly, you yourself have to pray the 5 salawat. That's the first form of da'wah. A da'wah bil fi'l, that you yourself are praying the 5 salawat. Secondly, a da'wah bil qawl. Then you teach others, you tell others, you advise others that we as Muslims have to pray 5 salawat. Which one of these two is wajib upon every single Muslim? Which one? Meaning by actions or by statements, which one is wajib? By actions. As for conveying the religion of Allah by words, what we understand by da'wah and nasiha, then this is mustahab. This is something which is encouraged, or we could say it is fardu kifaya, meaning it's an obligation upon a group of people. The people of knowledge, the ulama, the tullab al-ilm, the imams of the masjids, the khatib in the masjid, the da'i, etc. Fardu kifaya. But it's not fardu upon every single Muslim. And of course, when we say by words, I mean by words, by pen, by articles, all of this comes under ad-da'watu bil qawl. So the point is, when the author said, also from the obligations is giving da'wah to the religion of Allah, you write down, there are 2 forms of da'wah. Ad-da'watu bil qawl wa ad-da'watu bil fi'l. Calling to Allah through your words and calling to Allah through your actions. Calling to Allah through your actions by demonstrating and implementing Islam, this is wajib, this is obligation upon every single one of us. As for calling to Allah through our words, then this is fardu kifaya, meaning an obligation upon the ulama and the tullab al-ilm and the imams, etc. But it is not a wajib upon every single Muslim. And of course, in da'wah is a preservation of the deen. How is Islam preserved? How is Islam preserved? Write this as a benefit. The benefit is, how is Islam safeguarded and preserved? Hifdhud deen. Naam, hifdhud deen. How do we make hifdh of the religion of Allah? How do we preserve this knowledge? The ulama say that there are 4 ways in which the religion and this knowledge, it is preserved. There are 4 ways. As-sutur, was-sudur, wal-ri'aya, wal-riwaya. As-sutur, was-sudur, wal-ri'aya, wal-riwaya. طيب. Firstly, as-sudur, or we take as-sudur first. As-sudur means chests, hearts. Meaning, this religion, it is preserved, this knowledge is preserved through memorization, through study and memorization. You study it, you understand it, you memorize it, you are preserving the religion of Allah. You are preserving this knowledge. This is as-sudur, in hearts. Naam. The second way, as-sutur. As-sutur, what does it mean? Anybody knows Arabic? As-sutur? No, that's sath. As-sutur, as-satar is lines, meaning in books. This knowledge is also preserved in books. Books, articles, naam. Knowledge is also preserved here. So somebody who writes a book has preserved Islam and preserved knowledge. Thirdly, ar-ri'aya. And the meaning of ar-ri'aya is al-amal wal-ittiba', is preserving the religion of Allah through actions. When you pray the 5 salawat, you're preserving Islam. You're preserving this knowledge. Because if nobody prayed those salawat, the religion would be lost. That obligation would be lost. And then thirdly, ar-riwaya. And ar-riwaya means narrating and conveying, spreading the religion, giving da'wah by way of words. Also, in giving da'wah is preserving the religion of Allah. From these 4, Now, repeat to me, what are the 4 ways of preserving the religion of Allah? What did we say? How do we preserve knowledge of the religion of Allah? As-sudur, memorization, knowledge, understanding, knowledge, learning, memorization. As-sudur, in the hearts. Good. Second, as-sutur, the lines of the books, the articles on the internet, etc. Third, ar-ri'aya, implementing, following the sunnah and your actions. And then, ar-riwaya, narrating and conveying and giving da'wah to the religion of Allah. From these 4, as-sudur, was-sutur, wal-ri'aya, wal-riwaya, which is the most important? Ar-ri'aya, acting upon the knowledge. Acting upon the knowledge and safeguarding the knowledge through our action is more important than merely memorizing it or writing a book or an article, sending a tweet, or spreading it to others by your words. What's most important is ar-ri'aya. We preserve and safeguard this knowledge through our actions. Now, why do I mention this? That when a person does a righteous action, then you make 2 intentions. The first intention is al-imtithalu li amrillah, that I am implementing the command of Allah. Allah told me to pray salah, I am praying salah. The second intention is hifdhuddin, that I am preserving and safeguarding the religion of Islam through me implementing and demonstrating it. Whenever we do a righteous action, we have these 2 intentions. That I am doing it because Allah commanded me to do it, and I am doing it to protect and safeguard the religion. Because if nobody did those obligations, then how would it go to the next generation? It's not enough that it's in a book. It has to be in our actions as well. Then the 4th point, he said, as-sabru ala al-adhafi, having as-sabr. And why do we need to have as-sabr? Because even those who were the most beloved to Allah, meaning the prophets and the messengers, Allah subhanahu decreed that they would be tested. Now, even the prophets and messengers who came with miracles and revelation and ayat, we should flow at their fingertips, but Allah never decreed that everybody would accept it from them as soon as they say the word. So therefore, do me and you think that if you go and you talk to a person outside and you try to give him a little bit of nasiha, he's going to accept it straight away? No. And therefore, what does it require? It requires as-sabr. It requires as-sabr, patience. And what's the evidence for this? وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So tell me, ayyul ikhwa, the author said that the evidence for this is this surah. What does it mean? The evidence for what? When the author said, but dalilu qawluhu ta'ala, its evidence is wal asr. Yani its evidence, what's its? Referring to which thing?
To be patient.
Only to be patient?
Referring to the whole 4 points.
The 4 points. Meaning al-ilm, wal-amal, wal-da'wa, wal-sabr. The evidence for everything which has been mentioned is Surah Al-Asr. طيب, where's the evidence? And this is known as the shahid. The author mentioned the ayah, but which part of the ayah, which part of the surah is the point of evidence? Where's the evidence? Before that, even before that. But where in the surah? Where's the evidence for these 4 points? Which surah? Which part? Fadal.
So first of all, it says those who have iman.
So first he said illa alladhina amanu, and iman is built upon knowledge, upon al-ilm. Then
Performing like good right.
wa'amilu salihat, then they do righteous actions. This is the shahid for the second point. Then
Encouraging good people to do
watawasaw bil haqq, then they encourage others upon the truth. This is a da'wah. And then watawasaw bis sabr, they encourage each other upon patience. This is the evidence for as-sabr. This is the evidence for as-sabr. This sabr, this patience upon what? Patience upon what has been mentioned. Meaning patience upon knowledge, patience upon righteous actions, patience in staying away from sins, and patience upon ad-da'wah. Naam. And patience in encouraging each other to be patient. And patience in us advising each other, being there for each other, supporting each other to maintain patience. So when the author said as-sabr, meaning patience on what I have mentioned. Patience in learning, because it requires patience. Patience in righteous actions, it requires patience. Patience giving da'wah to others. And patience in encouraging each other to be firm and strong and patient. Then he said, Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, لو ما أنزل الله على خلقه إلا هذه السورة لكفتهم. That had Allah not revealed upon His creation except this surah, it would have been sufficient for them. Now, what does this statement mean? This statement of Ash-Shafi'i, what does it mean? Had Allah not revealed upon His creation except this surah, it would be sufficient upon them. Meaning what? Before Ahmed answers, anybody else? Daim, do you have anything? Yalla Ahmed, tafadhal.
The surah covers all four obligations of mankind, so it will be enough for mankind.
Ahsant. Naam, ahsant. Meaning when he said, had Allah not revealed upon His creation any other surah apart from this surah, meaning Surah Al-Asr, لَكَفَتْهُمْ أَيْ لَوَسِعَتْهُمْ, it will be sufficient. Meaning, now that you have read Surah Al-Asr and you understand Surah Al-Asr, now you know the obligation upon you is what? To have knowledge and iman, to do righteous actions, to give da'wah, and to be patient. Those obligations are now obligated upon you. Now, this statement of Ash-Shafi'i is mentioned in Tafsir ibn Kathir of Surah Al-Asr. Now, if you want to reference, if you go back to Tafsir ibn Kathir, then this statement is mentioned. He either said, لَوْ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ حُجَّةً عَلَى خَلْقِهِ إِلَّا لَكَفَتْهُمْ, and another wording, لَوَسِيَتْهُمْ. Now, then he mentioned the statement of Al-Bukhari rahimahullah. And Al-Bukhari, he said, بَابُ الْعِلْمِ قَبْلَ الْقَوْلِ وَالْعَمَلِ. Al-Bukhari said, the chapter of knowledge before statements and actions. Where did Bukhari say this? Where did Bukhari say the chapter of knowledge before statements and actions? Brother, what do you think? Where did Imam Bukhari say the chapter of knowledge before statements and actions? Where did he say it? Anybody for us and Daim? Anybody? No? Follow. In Sahih Bukhari. Meaning, when the author said Bukhari said, what he means, Bukhari wrote. In his Sahih, he brought a chapter, and the name of this chapter is Bab al-Ilm Qabla al-Qawli wal-Amal. The chapter of knowledge before statements and actions. As you know, Sahih Bukhari, it is divided into kutub, into, we could say, let's call it chapters. And then each kitab is divided into abwab, into sub-chapters. Naam. So for example, the first kitab, the first book or the first chapter of Sahih Bukhari is, who knows? Kitab Bad'ul Wahi, the book of how revelation began. Now, this is the first hadith in Sahih Bukhari. Afwan, it is the first chapter in Sahih Bukhari, and he mentions the story of revelation. Now, the second chapter or kitab in Sahih Bukhari is Kitabul Iman. The third chapter or kitab in Sahih Bukhari is Kitabul Ilm. In Kitabul Ilm, he brings a bab, he brings a sub-chapter called Bab al-Ilm Qabla al-Qawli wal-Amal. The chapter of knowledge precedes statements and actions. All the way to وَالدَّلِيلُ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, and its evidence is the saying of Allah, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهِ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ. Know that none has the right to worship except Allah, and seek forgiveness for your sins. فَبَدَأَ بِالْعِلْمِ قَبْلَ الْقَوْلِ وَالْعَمَلِ, and so he began with knowledge before statement and action. All of this is a statement of Imam Bukhari. This is the heading of that chapter. Naam. And then after the book of knowledge, or after the chapter of knowledge, Kitab al-Ilm, then there is Kitab al-Wudu, then al-Ghusl, then al-hayd, then at-tayammum, then after this the kitab al-salah, etc. So the point is that he said this in kitab al-ilm, in Sahih Bukhari, in kitab al-ilm, in bab al-ilm qabl al-qawli wal-amal. Of course, the author, why does the author mention this? Because he's trying to emphasize the importance of knowledge. That even Al-Bukhari, he has a whole chapter dedicated to knowledge comes before statement and actions. Knowledge comes before statement and actions. What's the evidence that knowledge comes before statements and actions? He said the saying of Allah, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ. Okay, where's the shahid in this ayah? Remember I said shahid means where's the point of evidence in this ayah? So where is the evidence in this ayah that knowledge comes before statements and actions? Where's the evidence? What's your name, Akhi? Nizam. Yeah. Before Nizam answers, does anybody have another answer? Nobody? Tafadhal.
So he says, so know that, there is no deity except Allah. And then it says, ask for forgiveness.
Ahsant. Look in the ayah how Allah began with fa'alam. He began with know, have knowledge. He ended the ayah with wastaghfir, and seek forgiveness. And seeking forgiveness is a statement. You say astaghfirullah. So Al-Bukhari said that look how Allah subhanahu began this ayah with knowing first, and then later on he mentioned wastaghfir, seek forgiveness. So knowledge came before statement and action. And who is knowledge sought from? The people of knowledge. Just as medicine is sought from doctors, then also knowledge, it is sought from its people, meaning the ulama and the tullab al-ilm. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimullah, in his Nuniyya, he said, وَالْجَهْلُ دَاءٌ قَاتِلٌ وَشِفَاؤُهُ أَمْرَانِ فِي التَّرْكِيبِ مُتَّفِقَانِ نَصٌّ مِّنَ الْقُرْآنِ أَوْ مِن سُنَّةٍ وَطَبِيبٍ ذَاكَ الْعَالِمُ الرَّبَّانِ. He said, وَالْجَهْلُ دَاءٌ قَاتِلٌ وَشِفَاؤُهُ, that ignorance is a dangerous illness, and its cure, amrani, is in two things. فِي التَّرْكِيبِ مُتَّفِقَانِ, and these two things have to come together. He said, نَصٌّ مِّنَ الْقُرْآنِ أَوْ مِن سُنَّةٍ. The first thing, the cure for this dangerous disease of ignorance is an evidence from the Qur'an or from the Sunnah. The second thing is tabib, a doctor. And who is the doctor? ذَاكَ عَالِمُ الرَّبَّانِ. It is the scholar. The righteous scholar, is the second cure. So ignorance is cured through evidences from the Qur'an and the Sunnah and an alim. A person cannot read the Qur'an, Sunnah and understand what he wants to understand. No, we have to take from the ulama, who took from the ulama, who took from the ulama, who took from the Sahaba, who took from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Did you have a question? Okay, tafadhal.
From Bukhari, the statement knowledge comes before speech and action. What evidence, which surah and ayah did you...
فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. The ayah which is mentioned, he said, بَابُ الْعِلْمِ قَبْلَ الْقَوْلِ وَالْعَمَلِ. If you look at the text, just look at the text. What does it say? What did Bukhari say? Read for me, Akhi.
Knowledge comes before speech and action.
Good. Then what did Bukhari say? No, carry on.
He doesn't have that part. It's like the one line is this one.
You mean it's missing in your...
Yeah, he doesn't have it on the...
Yeah, he doesn't. He's missing.
Did you print that yourself?
No.
No, did you print it yourself?
I got it from another class, from Ustadh Hassan Abdul Salam.
Okay, that's got mistakes in there.
Okay.
Take this one.
No.
No, that's got mistakes in there. Well, barakallahu feekum. No. So it's clear, inshallah, if you read it, it's clear. طيب. This was the first introduction. Any questions so far? So far, everything we've mentioned, everything that I've mentioned so far, is there any questions that we haven't understood?
That last quote that you mentioned, who is from?
The last quote, all of that is from Bukhari. Meaning, if you open Sahih Bukhari, the first chapter, Kitab Bad'ul Wahi. The second chapter, Kitab al-Iman. The third chapter, Kitab al-Ilm. If you go to halfway through Kitab al-Ilm, you'll see a chapter. That chapter is called, a subchapter is called Bab al-Ilm qabl al-Qawl wal-Amal. And the name of the chapter is all the way to the end of those quotation marks.
I think he's referring to Ibn Qayyim.
Oh, Ibn Qayyim, the poetry. The poetry. Yeah, that's in his Nuniyah. Here's a line of poetry in his Nuniyah. No. Any other questions so far? Anything we've not understood? No? طيب. خلاص. Brother, anything you طيب. تفضل.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله: اعلم رحمك الله أنه يجب على كل مسلم ومسلمة تعلم ثلاث هذه المسائل والعمل بهن. الأولى أن الله خلقنا ورزقنا ولم يتركنا هملا، بل أرسل إلينا رسولا، فمن أطاعه دخل الجنة ومن عصاه دخل النار. والدليل قوله تعالى: إنا أرسلنا إليكم رسولا شاهدا عليكم كما أرسلنا إلى فرعون رسولا، فعصى فرعون الرسول فأخذناه أخذا وبيلا. الثانية أن الله لا يرضى أن يشرك معه أحد في عبادته، لا ملك مقرب ولا نبي مرسل. والدليل قوله تعالى: وأن المساجد لله فلا تدعوا مع الله أحدا. الثالثة أن من أطاع الرسول ووحد الله لا يجوز له موالاة من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كان أقرب قريب. والدليل قوله تعالى: لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كانوا آباءهم أو أبناءهم أو إخوانهم أو عشيرتهم، أولئك كتب في قلوبهم الإيمان وأيدهم بروح منه ويدخلهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها، رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه، أولئك حزب الله، ألا إن حزب الله هم المفلحون.
أحسنت. جزاك الله خير. So the author now, he... the author, rahimullah, he's going to mention three more masail, three more important principles for us to understand. These are not Al-Usool Ath-Thalaatha. These are not the three principles we're talking about. This is still an introduction. So this is the second muqaddimah, the second introduction before he actually begins the book itself. This is second of the three introductions, important introductions. And these three introductions, these three principles which we just read, they are usuluddin. They are the foundations of this religion. If a person does not understand these three principles and does not implement these three principles, then his religion is not valid. So what is the first principle that we have to understand, every single Muslim has to understand? Naam, who can summarize for me the first principle? Just read and summarize it for me. Naam. No. Tafadhal. Naam, that Allah created us for a purpose. The principle is Allah created us for a purpose. We have to all understand. Allah subhanahu created us for a purpose. The second principle, what is it? Summarize it for me. The second principle. Now read it. What's the second principle?
Don't make partners with him.
Ahsant. That Allah only accepts Tawheed. The summary is that Allah subhanahu only accepts Tawheed. And the third principle is what? What's the third principle? Summarize for me the third principle. No. It's that a person of Iman cannot love and support a shirk and its people. This is the third principle. A person of Iman cannot love and support, notice, love and support shirk and the people of a shirk. Of course, we'll explain all of this. So we said the first principle, the author said that we have to know Allah subhanahu created us and He sustains us and He provided for us. However, He did not leave us without a purpose. Rather, He sent messengers to us, or He sent a messenger to us. Whoever obeys the messenger in fulfilling that purpose, he will enter into Jannah. And whoever disobeys the messenger in not fulfilling that purpose, then that person will enter into the fire. How do we know that Allah subhanahu created us for a purpose? Because Allah subhanahu is Al-Hakim. And what does Al-Hakim mean? What does Al-Hakim mean? Huh? No, Al-Hakim. Al-Hakim. The All-Wise. Would it be from the wisdom of Al-Hakim that He creates creation in vanity, without any purpose, without any goal, without any, just creation for the sake of creation? No. Everything that Allah creates, He creates for a purpose, because He's Al-Alim Al-Hakim Al-Khabir. He's the all-knowing, the all-wise, and the all-informed. And Allah subhanahu tells us in the Qur'an, He said, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Do you think that we created you abath, and just out of play, for no reason, and that you will not return back to us? So this ayah shows, and the name of Allah Al-Hakim, it shows that He only created creation and places upon this earth with a ghaya, with a message. طيب. What is the purpose? What is the purpose behind Allah subhanahu creating us? Three things. There are three ghayat, three reasons why Allah created us. The first of them, as that mentioned, to worship Allah. We were placed upon this earth to fulfill His religion. Where's the evidence for that? Ikhwa? Where's the evidence? Anybody? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence in the Qur'an that Allah created us to worship Him? One second. Anybody else? Tafadhal. Ahsant, in Surah Al-Dhariyat. Allah subhanahu said, the meaning of which is, I did not create humans nor jinn except that they should worship me. So Allah created us with this objective of fulfilling His religion and worshipping Him. The second ghaya, the second purpose why Allah created us is al-ibtila, al-ikhtibar, in order to test us. Allah created us in order to test us. Where is the evidence that Allah created us to test us? And Allah created everything around us to test us. Where's the evidence? الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم. The first ayah, the first ayah of Surah Al-Mulk, the one who created you, the one who created death and life, ليبلوكم, in order to test you. The third ghaya, the third purpose why Allah created us, is to know about Him, to learn about Him. Because Allah subhanahu said, لِتَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. In order for you to know that Allah has complete ability over everything, and for you to know that Allah has complete knowledge over everything. So these are the three ghayat, the three objectives, the three tests. There are three tests for us. Are we worshipping Him? Do we learn and know about Him? And are we passing the test which is around us? Now everything is a test, a fitna for us. Wealth is a test, poverty is a test, good health is a test, illness is a test, now marriage is a test, divorce is a test. All of this is a test. And these are the three reasons why Allah subhanahu created us. طيب, these ghayat, and these objectives, these reasons why Allah created us, how do we know that these are the reasons why Allah created us? How do we know that there is a ghaya and what that ghaya is? How do we know? Because Allah sent a messenger and revealed the Qur'an to the messenger. That's how we know the purpose. And this is why the author said that you should know, firstly, Allah created you, Allah sustains you, and He did not leave you without a purpose, meaning He gave you a purpose. And that He sent to you a messenger. And so if you obey the messenger, you enter into Jannah. If you disobey the messenger, you enter into the fire. Meaning, Allah subhanahu places upon this earth for a ghaya, for a purpose, but He did not leave you to make up that purpose. That purpose is not subjective between me and between that person. Rather, it is something which is objective. And that is that purpose was told to you by the messenger. And so if you accept what the messenger said and you implement it, you enter into Jannah. Otherwise, a person enters into the fire. And then he mentioned the evidence, Inna arsalna ilaykum rasulun shahidan alaykum, to the end of the ayah. So this principle is very important. Number one, in da'wah, and number two, in your own self. We have to understand this principle well. We have to understand that Allah places upon this earth for a purpose. Number one. Number two, that purpose He did not leave to our intellect or our logic. Rather, He sent a prophet, a messenger, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, teaches what that purpose was. What did the prophet teach what that purpose was? To worship Allah, to learn about Allah, and to be patient for the tests which are around us. If a person understands this principle in his daily life, your heart will submit to Al-Islam. And it will be easy for you to follow the teachings of Al-Islam. Because you know Allah placed me upon this earth for a purpose. That purpose is not left for me to decide, but Allah sent a messenger for him to tell me what that purpose is. And that messenger told me that the ghaya is to worship Him, to learn about Him, and to be patient over the tests which are around us. Now, all of that is the first thing we have to learn. The second thing, that Allah only loves Tawheed. Allah only accepts At-Tawheed. The author said, أن الله لا يرضى أن يشرك معه أحد في عبادته لا ملك مقرب ولا نبي مرسل. That Allah is not pleased with Ash-Shirk. Therefore, He's pleased with what? At-Tawheed. Allah is only pleased with Tawheed. He's not pleased with Ash-Shirk. What's the meaning of shirk here? He said, أن يشرك معه أحد في عبادته. That you direct any act of ibadah to other than Allah. You make a person a partner with Allah in any type of ibadah. Allah does not accept this. And He does not accept this even if that partner is the greatest angel or Nabiyyun Mursal, the greatest messenger. Who's the greatest angel? Jibreel alayhi salam. Who's the greatest messenger? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did the author say? The author said that Allah will not accept shirk even if that shirk is with Jibreel alayhi salam, meaning you're worshipping Jibreel, or even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you worship Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah hates that shirk. Now, why did the author mention the greatest angel and the greatest messenger? Because if Allah subhanahu is not accepting of shirk with Jibreel, and that is Jibreel, and He's not accepting of shirk with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then min babi awla, He does not accept shirk from the Abdul Qadir Jilani and Al-Hasan wal-Hussein and Ya Ali Madad and Ya Fatima and Ya Badawi and Ya Ghawthi A'zam, etc. Because He does not accept it from Jibreel or with Jibreel. And He does not accept it, that person does it with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, He does not accept it with anybody else, because everybody else is less than Him. Naam. Isa alayhi salam is not as virtuous as Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Badawi is not better than Jibreel. So if Allah detests shirk with Jibreel and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then anybody who is lower than them, min babi awla. Naam. And then what's the evidence? وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Now what's the translation of the ayah? Does it say?
Places of worship are for Allah alone, so do not invoke anyone along with Allah.
Now, so where's the shahid in this ayah? Meaning, where is the point of evidence in this ayah that Allah subhanahu does not accept shirk even if it is the greatest messenger or the greatest angel? Where's the shahid? Now, Ahmed, tafadhal. Which bit? Tell me which word in that ayah. Ahsan, ahada. Just that word ahada, that is the shahid. Meaning ahada, anybody. So a person cannot say that I accept that worshipping and invoking the idol is not allowed, but the wali and the salih and the nabi and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he's the nabi of Allah. No. Allah said ahada, anybody. And anybody means anybody. Naam. So, a person who worships Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and a person who worships Iblis, is any one of them better than the other one? No, both of them are kuffar. Doesn't matter if he worships Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam or he worships Iblis, both of them are as bad as each other, because all of it is shirk and kufr, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not differentiate between who the shirk or the kufr is with. Naam. So this is the shahid, the word ahada. And then the third principle, which is important for us to understand, is that whoever follows the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam and whoever affirms the tawheed of Allah, لا يجوز له موالاة من حاد الله ورسوله, then it's not permitted for him to have muwala of those who are enemies of Allah and His Messenger, even if they are the closest people to him. And what is the meaning of al-muwala? What is the meaning of al-muwala? Meaning loving and aiding and supporting those who are enemies of Allah, either shirk and the people of shirk. Shirk and the people of shirk. Now, it's not allowed for a person who has iman in Allah and believes in tawheed and follows the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to then love and support the enemies of Allah and His Messenger. So the point of this muwala, this supporting, it is supporting the enemies of Islam due to your love of their kufr and their shirk. Naam. And this is why the ulama differentiate between a person who supports the enemies of Islam for a worldly reason. He was bribed, he was threatened with sanctions, he wants money, he was blackmailed, and so he supports a non-Muslim over a Muslim. They say this is a sin. And a person who supports the enemies of Islam over the Muslims due to loving the shirk or the kufr or wanting that shirk to become prevalent, then this is kufrun akbar. This is major kufr. Because al-muwala, which is the shirk and which is kufr, the muwala which takes a person out of the fold of Islam, is muwala which is based upon mahabba, which is based upon loving what they are upon. As opposed to a person who supports the enemies of Islam over the Muslims due to a worldly reason. Like I said, the country was threatened with sanctions, so the person gave in. It's haram. It's not allowed to support a non-Muslim enemy of a Muslim over al-Islam. But due to the love of the dunya, he gave in. This is a sin, and it is a major sin, and it is minor kufr. But a person supports the enemies of Islam over the Muslims due to his love, his muhabba of whatever they have, the kufr over Islam, then that is major kufr. What's the evidence for this? The ayah which the author quoted, what did he say? Now, what's the meaning of it?
You will not find people who believe in Allah on the last day loving those who oppose Allah and His Messenger.
Yuwaduna. He said loving. So notice the author, in the principle he mentioned mawala. The principle he mentioned supporting. But when he wanted to explain the meaning of al-muwala, he mentioned an ayah which mentions loving. Naam. And of course there are other evidences which are which prove this. We'll discuss that another time inshallah. Naam. So this is the third principle, that a person of iman has to love tawheed and the people of tawheed, and he has to support tawheed and the people of tawheed. And it's not allowed for a person of iman to love shirk and support shirk and kufr over al-Islam. Now to the end of the ayah. Now,
I have a question, like for example, say like you're giving testimony or something, and a Muslim is known for his not having good behavior.
yeah.
There's another non-Muslim, and he has good behavior, and you're asked to judge between them two, and you say that from what I've seen, the non-Muslim has better behavior. Does that come under this category?
Regarding what? Like if it's something specific. Now,
Like for example, like someone saying that I want to do business with a person.
yeah, if it's something specific, meaning, let's say, this Muslim, he's known for lying, treachery, crimes, etc. Then here criticizing that non-Muslim and giving nasiha is wajib. Meaning, this is why sometimes we know ghiba is haram. We know sometimes ghiba is wajib. So, for example, refuting an innovator is a ghiba because you're mentioning bad things about him, but it's wajib. Backbiting a person in order to prevent his crimes is wajib. And when you go to the police and you say that there's this person, he may be Muslim, but he's dealing drugs and he's harming people, that backbiting is wajib. When it comes to marriage, and if somebody comes to you and says to you, look, Fulan ibn Fulan, he's asked for the hand of my daughter in marriage, what do you know about him? Now, here ghiba becomes wajib. If you know that he's not appropriate, you say, no, he's not appropriate, these are the reasons, this is wajib. Also, in helping to stop oppression, it is wajib. So these are areas where ghiba is wajib. In this situation, is that person supporting the kafir over the Muslim because of his love for kufr? No. It's not because of his love for kufr. So we said, if a person supports a kafir over a Muslim because of his love for kufr over Islam, then that is kufrun akbar. That is ridda. If a person supports a kafir over a Muslim for dunya reason, something based upon the dunya, then it's haram, but it's not kufrun akbar. And why? Because the author, when he spoke about al-muwala, he explained it with the ayah which mentions love. Yuwaduna. And yuwaduna is from the word al-mawadda. And mawadda is sincere love. Sincere love for what they are upon. Any other questions so far regarding anything that you have not understood, anything which you missed out, you did not write down? Any questions? No, any questions? No. طيب. So now we've got the third muqaddimah, the third principle before we begin studying the text. So we still have not entered into Thalathatul Usool wa adillatuha. We're studying muqaddimat, important principles. Because these principles, they underpin what we're going to study next. So we have to understand these principles first. تفضل أخي. One second. Did we not give an exam last week?
We did.
Where's the exam? How many people have done the exam? One. Did you done it?
Yeah,
So you've not done it. One person so far. 2, 3. طيب. Did you take the exam? No. Have you got any spare copies? We did have some spare copies. Now, everybody take the exam. The exam's from Al-Qawaid Al-Arba'. Now, remember the rule. I said you can read the paper and you can look at your notes. But then once you're going to answer, then you close your notes. So I've got no problem. Read all the questions. Read your notes. Now, memorize all the answers if you want. Then close your notes and then answer the question. And then in next week's lesson, we're going to go through the answers. And all of it is based upon Al-Qawaid Al-Arba', and the videos are online, the lessons are online, and from your notes, inshallah. Anybody who hasn't got the thing, then take it from Shaykh Thoban, please. تفضل.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله اعلم أرشدك الله لطاعته أن الحنيفية ملة إبراهيم أن تعبد الله وحده مخلصا له الدين وبذلك أمر الله جميع الناس وخلقهم لها كما قال تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون ومعنى يعبدون يوحدون وأعظم ما أمر الله به التوحيد وهو إفراد الله بالعبادة وأعظم ما نهى عنه الشرك وهو دعوة غيره معه والدليل قوله تعالى واعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا.
أحسنت. نعم أحسنت. جزاك الله خير. The author, he now mentions the third muqaddimah, the third introduction before we even start studying Al-Usool Ath-Thalaatha. And he said, اعلم أرشدك الله لطاعته. Know, may Allah direct you to His obedience. Why did the author make a dua? Why did he say, may Allah direct you to His obedience? Why did he make a dua? To teach us that knowledge and teaching, and that was based upon mercy and compassion and making dua for the learners and for the students. He said, you should know that Al-Hanifiyya is millatu Ibrahim. It is the path of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This we studied in Al-Qawaid Al-Arba'. What does Hanifiyya mean? And I think it's part of your test. What does Al-Hanifiyya mean? Who knows? No, تفضل.
to incline more towards Tawheed and stay with
So Al-Hanifiyya, and Al-Hunafa, It comes from the word al-mail. And al-mail means to bend away. So al-Hanifiyya, it is al-millah al-ma'ila an al-shirk al-mabniyya ala tawheed. The path which goes away from shirk and goes towards at-tawheed. This is the meaning of al-Hanif, because al-Hanaf, linguistically it means al-mail. And al-mail means to turn away from something and turn towards something. Meaning turn away from shirk and turn towards at-tawheed. And he said that it is أن تعبد الله وحده مخلصا له الدين. And it is for you to worship Allah alone, making all of your deen, your actions, ad-deen means actions, sincere for His sake. And it is millatu Ibrahim. It is the path of Ibrahim. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Ibrahim was not Yahudi, neither was he Nasrani, but he was Hanif, meaning he was upon Tawheed, away from shirk. And he was a Muslim, meaning he submitted himself to the command of Allah. And he was not from the people of ash-shirk. Naam. وَبِذَلِكَ أَمَرَ اللَّهُ جَمِيعَ النَّاسِ. And this is what Allah ordered all the people with. Allah ordered, what's the ayah? أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. Is that the ayah? ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم. No. نعم, Allah said أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا. And then we reveal to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, check it. Allah said, and then we reveal to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you should follow the path of Ibrahim, Hanifa, i.e. al-ikhlas in your actions. So Allah ordered the Prophet to follow that, and He ordered us to follow it. This is the meaning of وَبِذَلِكَ أَمَرَ اللَّهُ جَمِيعَ النَّاسِ وَخَلَقَهُمْ لَهَا. And Allah created us to be Hanif. What's the evidence for this? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And when Allah says in the Qur'an, لِيَعْبُدُونَ, what does He mean? لِيُوَحِّدُونَ. He means at-tawheed. The author said, وَمَعْنَا يَعْبُدُونَ يُوَحِّدُونَ. The meaning of worship me, meaning يُوَحِّدُونَ, have tawheed. This statement, وَمَعْنَا يَعْبُدُونَ يُوَحِّدُونَ, this is the statement of Ibn Abbaas radiallahu anhuma. So put a reference there, mentioned by Ibn Abbaas. And this is mentioned by Al-Baghawi in his tafsir. Mentioned by Al-Baghawi in his tafsir, Ma'alim al-Tanzil. Which surah? Surah Nahl. طيب. وَأَعْظَمُ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ التَّوْحِيدِ. The greatest, most important, most fundamental commandment which Allah commanded you with is at-tawheed. And what's the definition of tawheed? Ifradullahi bil-ibadah. To single out Allah in every act of worship. This is the most basic definition of tawheed. What is the greatest command? What's the greatest principle? The foundation of our religion. When we call the non-Muslims, what do we call them to? Do we call them to salah? Do we call them to hijab? Do we call them to hijrah? Do we call them to jihad? No, we call them to tawheed. That we have to worship Allah alone. Now, when we define who Allah subhanahu is, how do we, and if it's correct to say that word, how do we define and describe Allah? The one who has the right to be worshipped alone. Naam. وَأَعْظَمُ مَا نَهَا عَنْهُ الشِّرْكِ. And the most severe thing that Allah forbade us against is ash-shirk. And what's the meaning of shirk? The opposite of at-tawheed. It is da'watu ghayrillah ma'allah. It is to invoke or worship others along with invoking or worshipping Allah. And the evidence for this is wa'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'a. Worship Allah, wa'budullah. And what does wa'budullah mean? What does wa'budullah mean? What did Ibn Abbas say? Ya'budun yuwahidun. This is a general principle. Meaning if somebody asks you, and you find some of the juhal, they ask this question, where does Allah mention tawheed in the Qur'an? Say, every single time Allah mentions ibadah in the Qur'an, He means by it at-tawheed. Who said this to you? Ibn Abbas said it. And Ibn Abbas is Tarjuman al-Qur'an. Naam. So Tawheed is mentioned in the Quran where every word where ibadah is mentioned. When Allah says wa'budullah, alla ta'budu illa iyyah, illa liya'budun, all of this is mentioning at-Tawheed. This is what Ibn Abbaas radiallahu anhuma said. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. And what's the evidence that the meaning of ibadah is at-Tawheed in the Quran? What's the evidence? Now, look at the last ayah. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Where is the shahid in this ayah that ibadah means at-Tawheed? Where is the shahid in this ayah? Meaning, where's the point of evidence in this ayah that whenever Allah mentions ibadah in the Quran, He means by it at-Tawheed? Before Ahmad, can anybody answer? Now, can anybody think? تفضل أخي. Sorry?
The word like when he says worship him alone.
No, alone is not mentioned there. Like in the ayah, Allah said, wa'budullah, worship Allah. Now, alone is a translation and in brackets. So, this ayah, wa'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'a, there's an evidence in that any time the word ibadah comes in the Quran, it actually means at-Tawheed. But I want to know where. Where's the shahid? Luqman? Huh? تفضل. طيب. But I'm saying, where's the evidence that means Tawheed? Where's the evidence? Ahmed?
Because wa'budu means to worship.
But where's the evidence for that? From that ayah. Okay, what's the opposite of Tawheed? Shirk. Allah mentions two opposites here. He mentions ibadah and the shirk. What's the opposite of shirk? Tawheed. So what does ibadah mean? At-Tawheed. Because Allah mentioned two opposites. Now, but instead of mentioning the word Tawheed, He mentioned al-ibadah. Because ibadah is Tawheed. Tawheed is al-ibadah. Fahimt? Now, so this evidence shows us that the meaning of ibadah, it is at-Tawheed. Because there is no ibadah without Tawheed. Just as there's no salah without wudu. If a person prayed salah, and if a person came at Asr time, faced the Qibla, said Allahu Akbar, prayed 4 rak'at, recited Surah Fatiha, made sujood, ruku, etc. But intentionally he did it without wudu. Do we call that action salah? We don't call that action salah. We say you haven't prayed salah. None of that is valid because there was no wudu. Like this, ibadah is not called ibadah without at-Tawheed. And the meaning of Tawheed is ibadatullahi wahda, to worship Allah alone. And the reason why the word ibadah is used in the Quran instead of Tawheed is that in order for you to be a person of Tawheed, you have to worship Allah. It's not enough for us to know Tawheed means ifradullahi bil ibadah and it is 3 types, al-rububiyyah, wal-uluhiyyah, wal-asma, wa-sifat. No. For you to be a person of Tawheed, you have to worship Allah. You have to perform His ibadat. And this is why, if you remember in the previous lesson, I said to you, let's say there's a person and you ask him, what's the definition of Tawheed? He says, I don't know what the definition of Tawheed is. And then you ask him, what are the 3 types of Tawheed? And he says, I don't know what the 3 types of Tawheed is. And you say to him, have you read Kitab al-Tawheed? I say, I don't know who the author of Kitab al-Tawheed is. Naam. But he worships Allah alone. Is he a muwahhid? Is he a person of Tawheed? Naam, he's a person of Tawheed. Let's say you have a person who's memorized the definition of Tawheed, and he knows the types of Tawheed, and he knows the evidences for Tawheed, and he's memorized Kitab al-Tawheed, but he does not worship Allah. Is he a person of Tawheed? He's not a person of Tawheed. So Tawheed, it is worship and worshipping Allah alone Azza wa Jal. And then the author said, فَإِذَا قِيلَ لَكَ مَا الْأُصُولُ الثَّلَاثَةَ الَّتِي يَجِبُ عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ مَعْرِفَتُهَا. So if it is said to you, what are the 3 principles which a person must know? This is not the beginning of the book. This is not the beginning of the Risala. Everything previous to this was important muqaddimat, important introductions that we have to understand. We suffice with that. Wallahu a'lam. Is there any questions that you have not understood so far? Because obviously next week I'm going to ask you. Then you can't say to me, I didn't get it, I didn't understand, I didn't write it down. Ahmed,
What was the way you broke down the word al-Hanafiyyah?
Al-Hanafiyyah, linguistically, Al-Hanaf, in the Arabic language, it means Al-Mail. And Al-Mail, Mim, Ya, Lam. Mim, Fatha, Ya, Sukun, Lam, Al-Mail. And mail, Mala Yamilu, means to turn towards or away from something. Mala anhu, mala ilay, meaning he turned to something or he turned away from something. Naam. And so Al-Hanafiya or Al-Hanifiyya, it means to turn away from shirk and to turn towards At-Tawheed, because it's from the word Al-Mail. Now, and Millatu Ibrahim was that he turned away from shirk and he turned towards At-Tawheed. So his millah is Al-Ma'ila ani shirk Al-Mabni ala Tawheed, turning away from shirk and built upon At-Tawheed. Now, any more questions? Questions? No. خلاص, when's the next lesson? Next Monday. A week on Monday, inshallah. It's the next lesson. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا وسلم.